The World Economic Forum continues in Davos, Switzerland, and in a special CNBC Africa exclusive, my colleague Fifi Peters sat down for an extended conversation with Duma Boko, Botswana's newly elected president, on advancing Africa's economy and governance, as well as promoting intra-African trade through the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. Let's listen in on that discussion.
The meetings have been very fruitful, very, very good indeed. They've exposed me to certain of the key players in the investment space. I've also had occasion to have bilaterals with other world leaders, which has been extremely, extremely beneficial.
Like who?
I've met President Ramaphosa, I've met the President of Singapore, I've met the King of Lesotho. So it's been extremely helpful.
I do appreciate that conversations between heads of state are of a private and sensitive nature, but is there anything that you are able to share with us regarding what was discussed, sir?
Look, the first thing that we want to do, especially with the likes of President Ramaphosa, who's our closest neighbor and biggest trading partner, is multifold. But one, to strengthen and deepen the relations that subsist between the two countries and recommit to growing our economies together. The second is to lay a foundation for the creation of more durable and broader partnerships between us as members of the same customs union and other regional trading blocs. The third is also to open up trade infrastructure corridors that will enable the free flow of goods and services amongst our people and in the process to grow our economies. So we were able to share ideas, to recommit ourselves to being closer, collaborating and sustaining the partnerships that we already have and creating even bigger and stronger bonds of cooperation between us.
You touch on 2 points, sir. You make reference to a collaboration for the African continent under the Africa Free Trade Continental Area deal, and you also make a reference to the hosting of Africa's G20 in South Africa later on this year. Perhaps let's start off with the G20. It has been President Ramaphosa's very firm message here at WEF. The reason why perhaps he was also given a special address just to present the G20 agenda for the continent. What is Botswana hoping to gain from the hosting of the G20 on the African continent? So what are your asks?
Firstly, we congratulate South Africa. We stand in solidarity with South Africa on being the president of the G20 and hosting. We believe that it presents an opportunity not just for South Africa, but as the trumpet voice of the rest of the African continent, to tell the African narrative, to re-script it and present it in its boldest relief, which is that we want freer and more equitable trading practices in the face of a rapidly polarizing world that is experiencing trade protectionism. So we want to move away from this and create a more equitable trading environment where the smaller economies are also cushioned against the exogenous threats of economic imbalances across the world. And so we believe that this is an opportunity for Africa to be visible, to be fully represented through South Africa as its mouthpiece, and to begin a serious conversation about climate action, for instance, ensuring that technologies are shared, skills are transferred, that create an uptake of adaptable, disruptive technologies that deepen and augment the efforts of many of the African countries. So we hope that we will be able to have this visibility and to also shape the developing dialogue around issues of multilateralism, which we advocate, and a rules-based economic system for the world.
You make reference of the phrase a trumpet voice, and I think it's quite apt, just given the fact that the President of the United States, Donald Trump's voice has dominated the World Economic Forum meetings. So be it when talking about technology, be it when talking about climate, be it when talking about trade. With that said, a lot of your counterparts are saying that perhaps now is the time for the African continent to strengthen the trade that it does within the continent through the AfCFTA, just given the risks of changing partnerships and relations with certain countries in the West. What is your position on that? First of all, obviously reflecting the changing trade dynamics internationally, but more importantly on the AfCFTA and what Botswana is hoping to do in that space, sir?
Well, the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement presents a unique opportunity to create a solid trading bloc of Africa. It opens up a whole market that will advance economies of many of the African states. It also generates an uptake and should generate an uptake of technology. There's a creation of a payment system that enables intra-Africa trade, and we hope that this will generate amazing growth for many of the African countries, including Botswana. That is one. The second is it also calls for a harmonization of trade practices and policies across the breadth and dimensions of the African continent. All the strictures and obstacles that presently exist in relation to the free movement of goods and services across the borders will have to be addressed, and all these strictures removed, and the legal environment and the trading environment harmonized. This is very important. It will also enable the African countries now coming together under this solidarity of the African Free Continental Trade Area Agreement to then be able to influence issues and events and policies and practices in the rapidly evolving global economy. Africa will now begin to be taken seriously, more seriously than it has ever been in the past. And with the era of uncertainty that we see now, we believe that it would be very important for Africa to assert itself. So we have this African Continental Free Trade Agreement will open very vast spaces for youth and women because it has protocols that are targeting those specifically. It will also create many opportunities in fintech for many startups on the African continent. It will generate the uptake of technology, artificial intelligence, blockchain, quantum computing in the area of health. For us, blockchain in Botswana has facilitated provenance tracking of our diamonds. And so we will deploy the technology for not just provenance tracking, but authentication, certification of diamonds and many other products. And so we believe that the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement would be very critical. But what will also be more fundamental for many of the countries that have what in international law is called a dualistic approach, where these treaties and agreements don't find automatic application and enforcement in domestic legislation. So after the signing and ratification, there now has to follow a process within country of domestication and incorporation into domestic legislation, which will for us result in a complete, comprehensive review of our legislative environment. Mm-hmm. And this will enable us to then harmonize with others in Africa. So this is great.
Wonderful indeed. And so you touched on diamonds, and I think that many people who are familiar with the story of Botswana are familiar with how critical diamonds have been for your economy, notwithstanding the efforts that have been made, and I'm sure you can even touch on them to diversify the economy from diamonds. But you would have been following developments in the industry, and while diamonds are girls' best friends still, as it were, it seems as though it's diamonds of a different nature now, those that are grown in labs that are finding a lot more favor on the ears and also on the fingers. I had a run-in with the CEO of De Beers earlier this week, and investors who, of course, are viewers of CNBC Africa have been watching the diamond story quite closely as it does pertain to De Beers and Anglo-American. So I recall a conversation with your predecessor in Texas about the dynamics, what was going on, the company's plans to divest certain of its assets, including diamonds. And I do know that you have communicated on public platforms an approach to do things differently when it comes to relating with your private sector. Is there anything that you can share in that regard, specifically to the process underway at De Beers?
Well, we've been in partnership with De Beers for a very long time. It's been a very durable, very beneficial partnership for Botswana. We are now at a stage where we are renegotiating the agreement. And we are renegotiating the agreement against the backdrop where one of the investors in De Beers, being Anglo-American, seeks to divest. And so this is one of the dynamics that we have to deal with. But what is certain is that De Beers will remain reconfigured in some shape or form around the government of Botswana and whoever the other investors that will come on board may be after Anglo-American divests. So this is a conversation that is ongoing, and we trust that it will be concluded fairly soon, because it has to be, so that we give stability and certainty to the diamond industry. That is but just one aspect. And this is, the reality here is that our economy has been dependent on diamonds. It's been powered, driven, sustained over a long period of time by diamonds. But we're also looking at diversifying the economy, first within the mineral space, diversifying it away from diamonds, focusing on other, including base minerals, and now engaging in beneficiation and manufacturing in partnership with investors from all over the world. So this is one of the things that we are doing. And we also are looking at powering our economy on the twin engines of, one, the green economy, ecotourism, climate-smart agriculture, precision farming, where we are able to deploy AI to do predictive analytics, look at yield optimization, plant disease anticipation and preparation, and many others. And so we are looking at the green economy and renewable energy, which is an immense opportunity for the country and for investors. And we're looking at it in a number of very creative, perhaps unorthodox ways if one looks at what has been happening thus far. One of these is to move away from the over-centralized approach of having one source for the generation and distribution of power. We now want to go the direction of mini grids, if you will. Mini grids where we are able to provide or enable technology to provide solutions at household level, and at that micro level, not just provide energy for the household, but also create a business out of it, in the sense that this household that now is able to generate power for itself would also be able to sell any excess power that it has generated into the national grid. And so it becomes a business, and it also provides a solution. So we're looking at this, and we're looking at many other aspects. We are looking at AI in many other spaces. So the digital economy for us will create an environment that, one, provides cutting-edge efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
The renewal or issuance of a passport, and this is the quickest department in the government machinery in Botswana. It will take up to 5 days. With AI, it can take 5 minutes.
Okay.
And so when we create these efficiencies, we save a lot of resources on wastage, not corruption, wastage. So a huge chunk of the GDP of the country is lost through pure wastage. And so when we introduce these efficiencies in the financial space, in every facet of life and endeavor in our country, we are creating these efficiencies. We are therefore delivering service almost immediately, instantaneously, to those who need and require the service. So what does this do? This now makes the country more open, more transparent. It powers the economy, and it will grow our GDP. And more critically, it will also create spaces and spots for our young people and for women, which is most fundamental for us.
I'm glad that you mentioned those two aspects, which is where I want to close the interview, if you'll allow me, sir.
Yes.
Last question on the youth and last question on women. I think that the continent is observing you quite closely, leading one of the youngest administrations on the continent, although perhaps the likes of Rwanda, South Africa is also making inroads in that regard, and even Senegal are following suit. I can say from my humble observation that even internationally, what Botswana is doing right now with a younger face of leadership is something that is in a contrast to the current status quo. What are you saying to some of your counterparts then, so on the continent, and perhaps even counterparts here at the World Economic Forum, about why now is the time for investing in young people at leadership level and women at leadership level? And are there any concerns about the risks that they could potentially bring for economies?
Thank you very much for that question. I think the first thing we need to appreciate is that having young people take up leadership positions and women is an imperative. In fact, it is, I dare say, a survival imperative. They comprise the bulk of the population. So their marginalization results in casting away from the mainstream to the underbelly of society the majority of the people in that society. That is the first. The second is young people are dynamic. Their youthful verve and vitality is needed now more than ever before, because the unfolding world is a world of technology. So we need deployment of technology, and they have the aptitude. They are tech savvy. They are digital natives. And so this is their time. There's no two ways about it. And if we are serious about growing our economies, tripling GDPs and achieving stunning levels of growth economically in this rapidly evolving economic situation of the world, we cannot but have young people play a leading role. And so what we've merely done is acknowledge, accept this reality, and enact the reality. And I am encouraged that other countries are also going the same route. So we will have these marauding energies of young people now power our economies. And Africa is a young, very young continent. Young people, able-bodied, healthy, energetic, creative, need to take to the front lines now.